America's #1.
Dramatic snow rescues caught on camera. Nearly 200 drivers and travelers were stranded on a highway slammed with snow in Turkey. The country's disaster response crews spent 12 hours evacuating people stuck in cars and buses. And in Istanbul, the city's busy airport shut down. Heavy snow from that rare storm caused the roof on one of the cargo terminals to collapse. Tonight, thousands of American troops on high alert as the crisis between Ukraine and Russia escalates. The Biden administration considering moving more U.S. soldiers into the region, and the urgent order from the State Department to Americans in Ukraine to get out now. A rash of gun violence nationwide in the past few days. A child killed by a stray bullet and 2 police officers gunned down. The startling new details about the man accused of pulling the trigger on 2 New York City police officers and the mayor's blueprint to end this epidemic. Not in the clear yet. The prediction that Omicron's peak is still ahead from the country's top doctor as more children start to test positive for COVID. An outdated industrial piece of a Pennsylvania coal town finds a new place in the future of digital money, a rare access inside a Bitcoin mine.
These are the miners, the computers. We're not talking about people.
That's right. It's all computers that are processing algorithms at a very high rate.
An edge of your seat, can't look away. You'll never forget it. Weekend of football.
And succeed. Did he get the pylon?
Why this round of NFL playoff games was unlike any other by the numbers. Who has made history? Our conversation with the winningest woman in Jeopardy's run and how she hopes her experience sets an example for young trans people everywhere.
I was very conscious of really wanting to put my best foot forwards and you know, represent myself and my community as, you know, just the ordinary people that we are.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thank you so much for streaming with us. As we start the week, we begin tonight with the possibility of U.S. troops heading to Eastern Europe in an effort by the U.S. to stave off the growing crisis between the West and Russia over Ukraine. The Biden administration placing 8,500 troops on heightened alert. The president talking with NATO leaders over the phone this afternoon. This comes as the State Department ordered families of all American personnel at the U.S. Embassy in Ukraine to leave the country amid heightened fears of a Russian invasion. Here in the U.S., airmen at bases in California and Delaware getting ready in case rapid deployment is necessary. And it's all in response to the escalating tensions and troop count on the eastern Ukrainian border. Satellite images show tens of thousands of Russian troops that could be ready to invade. We're standing by to talk with a senator who was just in Ukraine as part of a bipartisan visit. But first, our chief global affairs correspondent, Martha Raddatz, leads us off.
With more Russian troops massing on Ukraine's border, Navy vessels in the Baltic Seas, and Russian fighter jets heading to Belarus, Ukraine's neighbor to the north, the Pentagon tonight placing 8,500 U.S. troops on heightened alert for possible rapid deployment to back NATO allies in Eastern Europe and the Baltics.
The United States has taken steps to heighten the readiness of its forces at home and abroad so that they are prepared to respond to a range of contingencies, including support to the NATO response force if it is activated.
The president talking with European leaders on a secure video call late this afternoon.
I had a very, very, very good meeting, total unanimity with all the European leaders.
That meeting followed one with his national security team at Camp David over the weekend. Biden could have deployed those troops to NATO immediately, but stopped short of that.
I want to reinforce that as of now, the decision has been made to put these units on higher alert and higher alert only. No decisions have been made to deploy any forces from the United States at this time.
The U.S. troops, which would be part of that NATO force, would include ground combat units, reconnaissance, and aviation forces. We joined U.S. fighter pilots on a NATO exercise when Russia was building up forces in the Baltics after it annexed Crimea from Ukraine.
We're flying over Estonia now, but just over to the east, to the right, is Russia.
We heard Russian pilots warn the Americans in 2016 not to cross the border, NATO saying its show of force was a critical deterrent. But now, with more than 100,000 Russian troops on Ukraine's border, the possibility of war seems greater than ever. And while the U.S. has ruled out sending troops into Ukraine itself, the U.S. is shipping hundreds of thousands of pounds of ammunition and lethal aid to Ukraine and evacuating some diplomatic personnel and families, saying an invasion could occur at any time. But Ukraine's president tonight said the embassy departures were unnecessary and premature and is urging people to remain calm.
Difficult to remain calm when so many are on edge. Martha Raddatz joins us now. Martha, we heard in your reporting that Biden could have deployed 8,500 troops, though he chose not to right away. Why?
Well, Lindsay, they want to pressure Putin but not provoke him or give him any reason to invade, because despite putting these troops on heightened alert, the White House said today that President Biden and the European leaders are still hoping for a diplomatic resolution. Lindsay?
All right, Martha Raddatz, our thanks to you as always. ABC senior White House correspondent Mary Bruce joins us now. Mary, what more can you tell us about President Biden's call with European leaders today on Ukraine? Does putting troops on alert signal a new strategy at this point from the White House?
Well, the White House insists and insisted over and over again that this actually is not a signal of a new strategy, that this had been an option that the president has had in his arsenal. It was something that we knew that they were considering for some time. But there is no doubt that there is, of course, a real change here. And the question is, what changed? As we heard the Pentagon say today, it became clear that Russia was not going to de-escalate. So the president today in the Situation Room talking with other leaders, and he said there was complete unanimity there, discussing their options, including, of course, economic costs that can be levied on Russia, so those crippling economic sanctions we've been hearing so much about. But the president also tweeting that they did discuss ways to reinforce security, and that is a sort of not so veiled reference at the troops that are now being put on alert. Now, as the Pentagon said today, because they felt that it is clear that Russia is not going to de-escalate, they wanted to give these troops as much time to prepare to be on a shorter tether, is how they're describing it, Lindsay.
And Mary, separately, the president raised eyebrows this afternoon in an exchange with a reporter. Tell us about what happened here.
Yeah, and I tell you, I was in the room for this. We were in the East Room. The president meeting with some of his economic advisors for an economic forum on competition. And as we often do, reporters asked questions on an unrelated topic on Ukraine. The president sort of bristled at that and chastised us for asking questions on Ukraine. And then another reporter, one of my colleagues, shouted out then, well, what about inflation? The president didn't seem to like that. I can tell you it was clear he was not in a good mood, because then standing right in front of a microphone, the president called that reporter something that I can't even say here aloud. He called him a stupid SOB. I have to tell you, it is unpresidential to say the least, and it is certainly something, you know, I have to say Biden's predecessor received a lot of fair criticism for his hostility towards the media. I think the president and the White House right now, they are getting a lot of scrutiny for this as well. It is one of the reasons that Biden is often known for his gaffes. I'm not sure if this is a gaffe or just him having a really bad day and saying something that is really inappropriate.
Did he apologize or express any remorse right after that?
I can tell you he has not apologized just yet, but I can also tell you that we have been scrambling to try and get a response from the White House. They are all right now up in the press office having a meeting. I suspect they are trying to figure out the best way to respond to this. The reporter himself has taken a bit of the high road and is trying simply to laugh it off.
Oh, okay. All right. Mary Bruce reporting in from the White House. Thanks so much, Mary.
Thank you.
Turning now back to Ukraine. Joining us now is Republican Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, a member of the Armed Services Committee who just visited Ukraine. Senator, thank you so much for joining us tonight. You've, of course, been on the ground there recently. Why should Americans care about this conflict?
Yeah, well, it's an important question, right, for somebody who represents, a bunch of people that live far from Ukraine. There's a number of reasons. I mean, there are obvious national security reasons when it comes to the stability of Europe. Ukraine's a smallish country. Russia's much larger, but smaller than it used to be. And yet the stability of Europe is of important consequence to the United States as a trading ally, as a NATO ally, providing security in the entire region. Also, there are a lot of North Dakotans who do business in Ukraine. There are a lot of Ukrainians who moved to North Dakota, as there are ancestors from several countries, and so we have some very direct and personal contacts. But the larger geopolitical global context is they're a freedom-loving country. Once part, of course, of the Soviet Union. Vladimir Putin obviously still harbors a fantasy about bringing them back under the Russian flag. And that has a lot of ramifications beyond just this little country of 42 million people, well beyond the country of Ukraine.
And Senator, as far as you're concerned, what is it that you believe that Vladimir Putin wants?
Well, Vladimir Putin wants his old Soviet regime back. I have no doubt about that. He's been willing to take it back a little bit at a time. Crimea, of course, being the most famous and directly relevant occupation that to this situation. He's been patient, but he's also a leader who's, I think, running out of time. In other words, he's not getting any younger, just like the rest of us. The time for fulfillment of taking more territory and more country underneath his umbrella, I think is getting to coming to a close. And I worry a lot about leaders who, while he's a smart guy, he's not irrational, but he also harbors these fantasies. And so I worry about people like him doing things that are irrational, or for that matter, well planned out, but still really, really bad.
And today, as you know, the Pentagon put 8,500 U.S. troops on heightened alert to support NATO in Eastern Europe. It has stopped short of deploying new troops to the region at this point. What's your reaction to that?
Yeah, so I'm a little confused by it, and I imagine others are as well. I think our position's always been that, that we wouldn't deploy troops on one hand. On the other hand, a unified NATO is really important, and the American leadership in unifying NATO is important. The previous report they just listened to, the president saying that there's complete unanimity among the European allies with regard to Ukraine. That would be brand new news to me, because up to this point there's not been unanimity. Even if there's unanimity is a far higher standard. So perhaps this extra show of force is a move to demonstrate unity. The problem is it's an event that's taken on in the context of a lot of confusion, and the believability of the president's bluster, I think, is certainly questionable at best, considering recent gaffes, especially the minor incursion gaffe of the other day. He's just not proven to be strong. The Afghanistan debacle, of course, continues to haunt him, and rightfully so. The ramifications well beyond Europe include things like, China and Taiwan, our allies in Taiwan, our adversaries in China, looking at this situation and wondering if we're going to continue to demonstrate weakness. I get the sense the president wants to demonstrate strength, but he's having a hard time with the credibility factor.
And just yesterday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken said that new sanctions against Russia could undercut the West's ability to deter Putin from invading Ukraine. But some of your colleagues disagree and want to take action to head off any potential invasion. Where do you stand on this debate?
So I think that doing sanctions after an invasion is too little too late. I mean, that's not going to deter anything. The threat of it isn't even deterring, because, again, this president has drawn lines before and then not crossed them, or not done anything when people have crossed them. I think he has a believability problem. I do think, and I strongly support, a bipartisan, strong sanctions package, realizing that in a 50-50 Senate, there's going to have to be compromise. But it can't. The sequence of when the sanctions kick in matters. And I think to get Vladimir Putin's attention, we need to issue some sanctions right now. Let's not forget, he's already, incurred, if you will, on Ukraine through cyber attacks. He's demonstrated his willingness and his ability to get inside of their systems, and he's going to act on that if we don't respond, in my view. And he only responds to strength, or at least from a deterrence standpoint. And that gets back a little bit to the 8,500 troops. The goal of all of this is to deter an invasion, and not to spark a war. Somebody talked about the balance between provoking and preventing. I think in Ukraine itself, having just come from there, one of the things I've noticed is that they're dealing with, of course, their own their own citizens, trying to not, create panic while at the same time demonstrating preparedness, which, by the way, I think they've done a pretty good job of, having seen a lot of their plans. But how this is all communicated is obviously very important. And I think a sanctions package needs to be a combination of increments that begin immediately.
And quite a balancing act, as you point out, the difference between provoking and preventing. Senator Kevin Cramer of North Dakota, we thank you so much for joining us again.
Always my pleasure, Lindsay. Thank you.
Now to the pandemic. Authorities are cautiously optimistic about the direction of the Omicron surge in some parts of the country where the variant hit first. Even so, 19 states are still reporting a rise in cases, so they warn that this is not the time to let down our guard. Here's ABC's Kaylee Hartung with the very latest.
Tonight, health authorities are cautiously optimistic about the numbers they're now seeing in parts of the country. The regions that saw the Omicron spike first, now showing signs they might be turning the corner. New cases are now plateauing or falling across 31 states.
I think there's a lot of room for optimism right now. Many parts of this country are rounding the corner in this epidemic and starting to see that easing pressure of cases.
But authorities urge caution, saying do not be complacent, pointing to the numbers. Still, nearly 700,000 new cases a day, still higher than any time in the pandemic. And hospitals in many states are still crushed. And deaths from COVID, which always lag behind case numbers, are still rising. An average of nearly 2,000 lives every day. And the teams struggling on the front lines want people to know this is not over.
Nobody is exaggerating this. These are the sickest patients that we've seen in our entire careers.
Dr. Anthony Fauci saying he's encouraged by these numbers too, but that we cannot let our guard down. We must be prepared for other possible variants, but acknowledged what he's seeing in this turn is encouraging.
Things are looking good. We don't want to get overconfident, but they look like they're going in the right direction right now.
In Los Angeles, more than 600,000 students are now required to upgrade from cloth to well-fitting masks with a nose wire. In Virginia tonight, the new showdown over masks. 7 school boards are suing the new Republican governor, Glenn Youngkin, to stop his new order, which now makes masks in schools optional. It comes as the first free N95 masks promised by the White House have now been handed out. This supermarket in Iowa. And some of those free at-home COVID tests now arriving ahead of schedule. At least 53 million Americans have visited the covidtest.gov site since it launched. Marcy Taylor is one of them.
Signed up on Tuesday and then received it on Friday, earlier than I expected.
This shipping center outside Los Angeles delivering 8.5 million tests today.
So if 20 truckloads full of rapid tests are going out every day, why is there still a backlog?
Well, because the receiving part from the airport, because of COVID, because of short of manpower, we get an airplane landed at LAX, and then it got stuck there for 4 or 5, even a week. It is frustrating, but we're doing it with passion.
And tonight in New York, the former governor of Alaska making headlines. Sarah Palin in New York to start her defamation trial against the New York Times, testing positive for COVID, halting the trial. It comes after she's rallied against vaccines. Judge Jed Rakoff saying she is, of course, unvaccinated. Palin, who has urged people not to get vaccinated, has said it will be over my dead body that I'll have to get a shot. She also reportedly had COVID last March.
Sarah Palin sticking to her guns there. Kaylee Hartung joins us now from that warehouse backlogged with those rapid COVID tests. Tonight, the FDA is pulling back authorization for monoclonal antibody treatments. Why is that, Kaylee?
Yeah, Lindsay, so the FDA has confirmed that Eli Lilly and Regeneron's therapies for monoclonal antibodies are no longer authorized for use in the U.S. because they have been found to not work against Omicron. Now, there is still a monoclonal antibody therapy from GlaxoSmithKline that they say is effective, and we also have those antiviral pills, too, Lindsay.
All right, a few options at least out there. Kaylee Hartung, our thanks to you. Now to the other crisis taking American lives. We're talking about the gun violence epidemic. Over the weekend, multiple people across various states losing their lives, from police officers to a child. The governor of New York even announced an interstate task force in the hopes of putting an action plan in place to help stop the violence. ABC's Phil Lipoff brings us this report.
Tonight, alarming new details about the gunman who police say shot 2 New York City police officers, killing Jason Rivera and gravely wounding his partner, Wilbert Mora.
This is what police officers are up against. He could have emptied out his 40 and still had another automatic assault weapon for every responding officer that responded.
Mayor Eric Adams revealing the suspect allegedly had multiple weapons on Friday night as police responded to a domestic violence call. A third officer firing back, hitting that suspect, who died today. The police union identified that third officer as Sumit Sulan. The mayor now rolling out his blueprint to end gun violence.
We will not surrender our city to the violent few.
New York Governor Kathy Hochul also announcing an interstate task force, including law enforcement agencies from 9 northeastern states and the ATF. Nationwide, a sharp rise in gun violence. Already this year, excluding suicides, more than 1,100 people have died, including at least 3 members of law enforcement. Just this weekend in Chicago, 8-year-old Melissa Ortega killed by a stray bullet, walking with her mother. Her family says the third grader had just come to the U.S. in August from Mexico for a better life. And in Harris County, Texas, police are now searching for the man who allegedly gunned down 47-year-old Corporal Charles Galloway during a traffic stop.
Our thanks to Phil for that. And now to a new development in the January 6th investigation. Tonight, the chairman of the House committee says that former Attorney General Bill Barr is talking with the committee. ABC's Jonathan Karl joins us now with what he's learned.
Well, several members of former President Trump's inner circle have refused to cooperate with the January 6th committee. His former Attorney General, Bill Barr, has spoken to committee investigators. Barr could be a key witness. In an interview for my book, Betrayal, Barr told me he investigated allegations of election fraud and told Trump flatly they were BS.
If I found something, I had no motive to suppress it. But my suspicion all the way along was that there was nothing there. It was all.
That includes Trump's claim that voting machines were rigged.
You can tell me all you want to about, this could have been hacked or, whatever. But it's a counting machine. So you just reconcile the two. Mm-hmm. There's a pile right there. How many ballots? 1,000.
Right.
Now let's see who they're for. There's been no discrepancy reported anywhere.
A source familiar with Barr's conversation with the committee tells ABC News that investigators asked him about a draft executive order obtained by Politico that would have authorized the Pentagon to seize voting machines. It's unclear who wrote the order, but it was dated December 16, 2 days after Barr left office. He told the committee he didn't know anything about it. The order was never signed, but according to multiple sources, Trump discussed it in a heated Oval Office meeting with White House officials and lawyer Sidney Powell.
Jonathan Karl joins us now. John, will former Attorney General Bill Barr testify before the January 6th committee?
Lindsay, that's a great question. It's not hard to imagine that he would be a star witness as they hold their public hearings in the coming months. But I am told that in his conversations with the committee that they have not yet asked if he would be willing to voluntarily testify at those public hearings. No invitation yet, no request yet, so unclear exactly how Barr would respond.
But it'll be fascinating, certainly, if he does. Jonathan Karl,
sure.
Our thanks to you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Now to a major move by the U.S. Supreme Court on the use of race in college admissions. The justices announced today that they'll take up a pair of cases to reconsider the legality of affirmative action. They involve some of the country's oldest and most elite schools, and the impact of their decisions could be sweeping. Our Devin Dwyer covers the court and joins us now. Devin, so who brought these challenges and what's at stake?
Yeah, Lindsay, these cases were brought by a group of conservative students called Students for Fair Admissions. It's a coalition of roughly 20,000 Asian American students led by a longtime affirmative action opponent, Edward Blum. And the students sued Harvard University and the University of North Carolina, alleging that Asian Americans were turned away at disproportionately higher rates than Black, Hispanic, and Native American students, essentially discriminated against on the basis of race. Now, the schools deny these claims. They say that race was one factor among many. And of course, the Supreme Court has upheld that practice several times. But it's that precedent, Lindsay, the ability of schools to use race as a factor in building a diverse student body that really could be on the line with these cases.
And as you just said, their race-conscious admissions have repeatedly been upheld by the court. So what's changed?
Well, quite simply, the makeup of the court. Obviously, it's much more conservative now. In fact, the last time the Supreme Court took up this issue was 2016. They reaffirmed the ability of schools to use race as a factor. 6 years later, Lindsay, gone Justice Anthony Kennedy. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, of course, has passed away. We have 3 new conservative justices installed by Donald Trump. This is a court skeptical of the use of race in any policy. Chief Justice John Roberts has been very outspoken on this, so the fact that they even took this case in light of the precedent suggests that they are very emboldened and unhindered at revisiting this long-standing precedent.
And when will they hear the cases, and what are affirmative action advocates saying tonight?
Well, they haven't scheduled them just yet. Likely going to be heard this fall, October perhaps, decided a year from right now. And proponents of affirmative action tonight, Lindsay, are preparing for battle. They say they have the data and the case to back up this policy. And tonight they are warning that eliminating race as a factor at admissions will harm not just minority students, Black and Hispanic students, but students of all backgrounds on college campuses where that learning environment really depends on a diverse group of students there together. Lindsay.
Devin Dwyer, always appreciate your reporting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lindsay.
And when we come back, the cruise ship controversy, the arrest warrant issued in connection with a boat that headed to the Bahamas. Also, the tributes pouring in tonight for a fashion icon. But first, our rare access inside a Bitcoin mine that's ignited a new environmental debate in an old Pennsylvania coal town. Stay with us.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States. It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
24 hours, Assault on the Capitol, the ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu, now streaming. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move out. Let's move out.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
National parks are incredibly safe places, but crime will happen.
Hey, Mom. My wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident. There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Welcome back. You've probably heard of Bitcoin, but you may not be entirely sure what it is or what it takes to make it. Tonight, we take you to a Pennsylvania coal town where one power plant has Bitcoin to thank for its reinvention. But the Bitcoin is also reigniting an age-old environmental debate in the Keystone State. Our Elizabeth Schulze reports.
In Pennsylvania's industrial heartland, nestled in the rolling hills outside Pittsburgh, a once dormant power plant is now humming with activity. One company is using the waste from decades of coal mining to power thousands of supercomputers running nonstop to create Bitcoin. But the power needed to run these complex computers has sparked a debate about the climate consequences of cryptocurrency.
These are the miners, the computers. We're not talking about people.
That's right. It's all computers that are processing algorithms at a very high rate.
Bitcoin is a type of digital money not regulated by any company or government. It can be exchanged online between people anywhere in the world without going through a bank. While coins like quarters or pennies are physically minted, Bitcoin is minted as a virtual token by computers through a process called mining. The value of one Bitcoin has skyrocketed from around $10,000 2 years ago to more than $40,000 in early 2022.
That particular machine will get about $30 a day on average.
So we're talking thousands of dollars every day from these computers.
That's right.
Jeff Campbell oversees the more than 10,000 computers mining Bitcoin at the Scrubgrass plant in Pennsylvania.
These are computers that are just designed to do one thing. They're designed to run as fast as possible 24 hours a day.
The problem? The computers need a lot of power. By one estimate, annual global Bitcoin mining uses more electricity than the entire nation of the Netherlands. Stronghold Digital Mining, which owns the Scrubgrass plant, has found its power source here at a waste coal pit.
Waste coal is the material left behind after decades of coal mine. Massive sites like these littered across the state of Pennsylvania. Piles and piles of low-quality black coal and other materials left deserted.
At this 221-acre waste coal site outside Pittsburgh, trucks scoop up heaps of discarded coal and deliver it about 60 miles away to Scrubgrass, which burns the waste coal to power the Bitcoin computers.
We found a way to utilize the power generation of the plant that's old school technology with a brand new supercomputer technology that's employed to mine cryptocurrency and Bitcoin.
After seeing so much waste coal abandoned across Pennsylvania, entrepreneur Bill Spence decided the best way to get rid of it was to burn it.
I feel like America had a party here in Pennsylvania. They had a party. Everybody went home and they left the remnants of the party here, and they said, oh, well, just cover it up, pull a rug over it. I mean, we live here. This is our community.
The piles of waste coal can leach acid into nearby streams and sometimes catch fire.
I grew up, I played on those waste coal piles, and that particular material, I feel, made me sick with cancer. My father had cancer, my grandfather had cancer, and I'd like to eliminate that environmental impact on our community.
After this waste coal is burned, the leftover ash is brought back to its original site, turning a coal pit into usable land.
This field used to be a pile of waste coal.
Waste coal. It was terrible. It was unusable.
Republican State Congressman Bob Brooks represents the community around the coal pit. He says getting rid of waste coal is a bipartisan priority in the state.
The best thing to do is clean them up, make that land productive, and take that uncontrolled, unprotected risk away from the system.
Pennsylvania offers up to $20 million in subsidies every year to companies that burn waste coal piles. But this process has its own environmental costs.
Burning the waste coal just isn't the appropriate solution.
Rob Altenberg runs the environmental nonprofit Penn Future.
Companies like Stronghold say that Bitcoin mining is the means to an end to remove these piles of waste coal that are hurting communities. How can you argue with that?
Well, they're not removing pollution, they're moving pollution. They're moving pollution from the land and they're moving it to the air. And we're the ones that are paying the price for it.
Latest available data shows the scrubgrass plant emitted the same amount of CO2 as 80,000 cars in 2019. Emissions that anger critics. Altenberg argues a better solution is relocating the waste coal to landfills. In another part of Pennsylvania, they did just that at a 3.2 million ton waste coal pile that's been cleaned up with the help of federal money.
Bitcoin in general is wasteful by design. And if you are going to do Bitcoin using the dirtiest source of power we have in the state, should be your last choice for generating that electricity.
I will tell you, we're making the best of a bad situation. And sometimes perfect is the enemy of very good.
In a state where coal mining runs through the veins of the land and its people, a new generation of mining, reigniting an age-old environmental debate.
I don't think we should stop what we're doing in order to get the perfect. Let's evolve into perfect.
Thanks to Elizabeth for that. Still ahead here on Prime, the surreal wintertime scene inferno near one of California's crown jewels. Also, you might want to check your spam folder, like, right now. You never know when you could find $3 million there. We'll explain coming up. But first, it was a weekend of epic football games. Tonight, we go by the numbers on what some are calling the best 2 days of football ever. But first, our tweet of the day. Happy 5th birthday to one of the most famous hippos in the world, Fiona.
An extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new Hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
It was a scary time.
In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. Had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there.
This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
World News Now.
And America This Morning.
The best new videos.
Breaking news overnight.
Your money and concerns about inflation.
The pandemic is not over.
The stories people are talking about.
You don't want to shave your legs? Don't. I was gonna say. And what to expect in the day ahead.
From the top of the world, baby! ABC World News Now and America This Morning.
Weekday mornings starting at 2 a.m. Eastern.
Up all night to keep you up to date.
This is American history. A violent white mob, a brutal attack, 300 black Americans killed right here in America. Now, it is time to uncover Tulsa's buried truth. The gripping story brought to light in a new podcast from ABC News. Available now on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Liftoff.
streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us. Welcome back, everyone. Now to that wild weekend of playoff football. 4 games, each literally decided on the very last play. If you were not glued to your TV all weekend, or even if you were, let's go by the numbers on a weekend for the history books in the NFL. 8 teams started the weekend battling for the Super Bowl. Tonight, we're down to 4. On Saturday, the Cincinnati Bengals upset the Tennessee Titans 19-16 on a last-second field goal, ending the Bengals' 31-year playoff drought. And later that night in snowy Green Bay, Wisconsin, the overwhelming favorite, the Packers, were shocked by the San Francisco 49ers with Robbie Gould's walk-off 45-yard field goal. On Sunday, defending Super Bowl champion Tom Brady and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers roaring all the way back from a 24-point deficit against the LA Rams to tie the game. But Matthew Stafford connected with Cooper Kupp on this 40-yard pass, leading the Rams to victory. And in the grand finale, in a game some are saying is one of the best NFL postseason games of all time, 78 total points were scored. The Kansas City Chiefs and Buffalo Bills traded blow after blow, scoring a combined 25 points in the last 2 minutes of their game after Buffalo went ahead 36-33. Patrick Mahomes, in just 13 seconds, was able to bring his team down the field and tie the game before connecting on a game-winning touchdown in overtime, sending the Chiefs to their 4th straight conference championship game. Good luck to all the teams set to play this coming weekend. And we still have lots to get to here on Prime tonight. The Arctic blast set to sweep across the country. Wind chills as low as -35 in some places. Yes, you heard that correctly. Also, the Baltimore row home tragedy, the firefighters injured trying to put out the flames. And our conversation with the Jeopardy champ making history and how she hopes her success can inspire young transgender people everywhere. But first, a look at our top trending stories on abcnews.com.
Powerful stories of our time, anytime. Nightline.
It's an extraordinary story.
A computer salesman was supposed to report to prison to begin a 17-year sentence.
They let him turn himself into jail with no escort.
No one thought he would run.
How do you evade capture for 25 years? How do you do that?
Now, join the search, following the U.S. Marshals as they uncover new leads in a global manhunt. Can you help catch this fugitive?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man?
Have you seen this man? Listen and join the all-new hunt wherever you get your podcasts.
Now streaming on ABC News Live 2020. True crime, cinematic, real-life drama, stunning, the unthinkable. Follow the clues. The Hunt. True crime 2020. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
National parks are incredibly safe places. A crime will happen.
Hey, Mama. My wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident. There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now. I was shocked. Something's not right.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a 3rd hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I know what happened, and I'm not guilty.
Why the fascination with criminal trials? Figure out what's really out there.
She revealed she had murdered his family.
I know in my heart that he did this.
It's the time of suspicion.
The ending's really tough.
You don't know whether truth is going to be difficult to find unless you try to find it.
This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're going to move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
This afternoon, a major announcement from the Pentagon amid growing intensity from Russian aggression towards Ukraine. The U.S. now placing 8,500 troops on high alert so they can be used to form part of NATO's response force if that unit is activated.
No decisions have been made to deploy any forces from the United States at this time.
The message follows this one from NATO Secretary General.
We will always do what is necessary to protect and defend all our allies.
Russia now amassing tens of thousands of troops along its border with Ukraine. Some fear a Russian invasion could happen at any moment, something Russia denies.
A tragic scene in Baltimore. A row house on fire collapsed, trapping firefighters who were battling the blaze. One of the firefighters was quickly pulled from the vacant house in critical condition. Two others later pulled from the wreckage and rushed to the hospital, where they later died. The fourth, once rescued, died on the scene. A solemn procession of firefighters could be seen escorting a van from the hospital.
From this moment, we will honor those who lost their lives today, for their bravery, for their courage, for their love and compassion for this great city, and for the fire department as well.
That unseasonable winter wildfire out west continuing to burn near California's Big Sur coastline, now 35% contained. Windy conditions, gusts up to 50 miles per hour, fueling the 700-acre fire, creating a challenge for firefighters. No rain in the forecast. And we're tracking a fast-moving clipper system. 10 states on alert for snow and cold from the Dakotas to the Northeast. Up to 5 inches of snow falling near Erie, Pennsylvania in the past 24 hours. The storm dropping several inches of snow in Cleveland and Pittsburgh before moving into western New York and New England. And behind this, a new Arctic blast. Wind chills plunging to 35 below in some parts by Wednesday.
Producers of the Broadway show Harry Potter and the Cursed Child fired the actor in the title role after a co-star filed a complaint about his conduct. Producers of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child say they made the decision to terminate James Snyder's contract after an independent investigation. Snyder had been suspended since November when producers received the complaint from a female co-star. No word on the details of that complaint.
Tributes are pouring in for barrier-breaking designer Manfred Thierry Mugler, who unexpectedly died Sunday at the age of 73. Bursting onto the scene in the 70s with a futuristic, hyper-feminine look, Mugler's dramatic designs graced the likes of Madonna, Beyoncé, David Bowie, Lady Gaga, and Cardi B, even designing for Cirque du Soleil. Then there was that famous wet dress worn by Kim Kardashian, the Frenchman re-emerging from retirement for the show-stopping 2019 Met Gala look. On Instagram, Kardashian writing, "My heart breaks, there's no one like you. You always said beauty will save the world." Diana Ross tweeting, "I will miss you." Mugler was also known for his wildly successful fragrance line, and while he stepped away from his namesake brand in 2002, he continued to create until the very end.
A good reason to look in your spam folder. A woman in Michigan nearly missed out on a Mega Millions jackpot.
Laura Spears bought her ticket online for the New Year's Eve drawing, then she forgot about it. A few days later, she was going through her spam folder looking for a missing email when she came across an email from the lottery saying she'd won. She plans to share her winnings with her family and retire early.
Welcome back, everyone. An arrest warrant has been issued for a cruise ship with American passengers on board. The ship reportedly has unpaid fuel bills and refuses to return to the U.S., instead putting passengers on a ferry to get back to American soil. ABC's Victor Oquendo has this story.
Tonight, the Crystal Symphony is a luxury cruise ship that may be on the lam after a federal judge issued a warrant to seize the ship. It was scheduled to return to Florida on Saturday, instead diverting to the Bahamas.
The captain came
over the public address, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, I have another announcement to make, and that is that we are not arriving in Miami tomorrow.
The passengers put on ferries Sunday back to Fort Lauderdale. According to a complaint obtained by our affiliate WPLG, fuel company Peninsula Petroleum claims Crystal Cruises and one of its sister lines owes them some $4.6 million in unpaid fuel bills dating back to last year.
We were all very scared. We didn't know what was going to happen. Until this morning, we did not know if we were going to get off the ship.
The cruise line telling ABC this end to the cruise was not the conclusion to our guest vacation we originally planned for. And this comes just days after Crystal Cruises suspended all sailings following a bankruptcy filing by its owner. The cruise line tells ABC News they can't comment on pending legal matters. Lindsay?
Victor, thank you. After a year of controversy in the wake of longtime Jeopardy host Alex Trebek's passing, America's favorite quiz show has come back stronger than ever for its 38th season. Some are crediting that winning streak, at least in part, to the current reigning champ, Amy Schneider, an engineering manager who, as of tonight, has 39 wins in a row, making her the second all-time Jeopardy winner behind none other than Ken Jennings.
What is cosmonaut?
Yes.
Russian 2000. What is Sierra Leone?
That's correct. Amy?
What is peaches into cream?
Yeah.
Word pairs for?
Amy?
What are property taxes?
Right you are.
That's a personal best, $71,400. Certainly gold medal worthy, and a 37-day total of $1,253,200. If there's a Jeopardy Olympian, you are one of them.
Amy has also banked more than $1.3 million in winnings so far, and she joins us now from her home in Oakland, California. Welcome to the show, Amy. Thanks so much for talking to us tonight.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So it's certainly hard for me to imagine a winning streak like yours. This is something that you dreamed of from a young child, and even after you tried out COVID, then delayed your appearance. At the time, what did you think the best possible outcome would be if you were able to make it on as a contestant?
I mean, I guess the best possible, it could have been anything. But what I was really expecting, and I told everybody this, I was like, I think if things go well, I can win 3 or 4 games. That was sort of the number that I had in mind. So yeah, obviously I was underselling myself.
Clearly you were, and it keeps getting bigger and bigger as far as the amount of money that you won and the number of wins as well. And so we are cheering for you. A lot has been made about your skill on the buzzer, which is clearly key to winning games. For those who don't know, contestants actually have to wait until the host finishes reading the clue before they are able to ring it. Otherwise, they are locked out for a few seconds. So how have you done this, mastering the buzzer? I hear you, in part, you kind of practice on a pen. Is that right?
That is correct. Yeah. I mean, I did practice with a pen at home and did my best to be, timing it to right when the host finishes and everything like that. But, you don't know until you get there how it's actually going to do. The at-home practice can only do so much. And then in my very first game, I was really, not struggling, but just not quite right on time where I needed to be in that first one. And I suddenly just decided to kind of throw out all the preparation I'd done and just kind of stop thinking about it and just sort of go by instinct. And for whatever reason, that worked. So, I don't know if that's advice that'll work for everyone, but that's certainly what worked for me.
It's kind of some good life advice there. Sometimes we just have to go for it and not think about things too hard. One of the most frequent questions that you've been asked since becoming a Jeopardy champion is, how did you get so smart? You even wrote an essay in which you talked about what being smart really means in the real world versus smart in answering Jeopardy questions. So how would you differentiate the two?
Well, I think, Jeopardy requires knowing a little about a lot. I think you look at just a month or so ago, they had their professors tournament. And I think that anyone who's a college professor is definitely arguably smarter than I am, for sure. And they did fine at Jeopardy, but they didn't dominate at it because they know a lot of stuff about some very specific things. And I think that's kind of probably more useful in the real world. But Jeopardy really rewards having a real breadth of knowledge. And that's what I have, because I'm just curious about everything, and I want to learn about everything that I can.
And you've, of course, already broken a lot of records on Jeopardy, but there's one first that is particularly meaningful. You're transgender, and while you aren't the first trans contestant on the show, you're most certainly the most famous. Do you ever think about the significance of 20 million viewers watching you every night?
I absolutely do. You know, and especially with Jeopardy, I know reaching an older audience that is, you know, maybe not as, that has maybe not been as exposed to trans people before, knowing that for a lot of them, I'm going to be not necessarily their first exposure, but kind of, you know, their first kind of sustained, almost non-political one. And so I was very conscious of really wanting to put my best foot forwards and you know, represent myself and my community as, you know, just the ordinary people that we are.
And you were very active on social media. On Instagram, you comment on each of your show outfits, tag the designer, and you aren't shy at all about repeats. And on Twitter, you break down your game strategy after each win. Has there been a downside to being so accessible?
You know, I don't really think so. I think, you know, I knew that, like, I was going to be, you know, out there in public, and that there was going to be some negativity heading my way. And I think that was going to happen regardless. And I think that being sort of accessible, trying to bring people in and trying to let them get to know me more than just what they see on the show, has brought, you know, more positivity, more engagement, more connection that has helped drown out what little negativity there's been.
And at some point, of course, your current winning streak will end. Could be way down the road, but certainly there's a lot coming up. You'll be competing against former champ Matt Amodio in this year's Tournament of Champions, and you'll be receiving a special award from GLAAD, among other things. Will you go back to being an engineering manager, do you think, ultimately? What does the future hold for you at this point?
You know, I'm not sure, but I mean, I'm definitely, this is an opportunity that's not going to come along again in my life, to have both, you know, the attention and the interest in different things. You know, I'm kind of talking with some people about maybe writing a book. Maybe there will be some other projects that will come along. And also having the financial security to be able to take a chance on trying a new career path. So I'm, you know, waiting to see like what seems, you know, potentially worth that risk, what seems really exciting and interesting. But if something like that comes along, I'm definitely open to taking the chance at it.
Well, all the best to you. We will be watching. Amy Schneider, thank you so much for joining us. And you can see how long Amy's winning streak will continue on Jeopardy, which airs weekdays. Check your local listings. Before we go tonight, the image of the day. It is a winter wonderland in Greece. Drone video captured this rare yet beautiful scene above the Acropolis Hill today. The symbol of Greece, the Parthenon, blanketed in white tonight. And that is our show for this hour. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Coming up in the next hour, we're staying on top of a few things. The massive prison break involving ISIS prisoners and the children caught in limbo as a result. And you may know him from his role in the smash hit musical Hamilton, but tonight our conversation with David Diggs, dishing all the details on his newest project.
More Americans choose ABC News, America's #1 news source. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back. We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
Admit it. These days, what you need to know
Seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know,
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it? Feel smarter,
feel better.
feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
The ladies you love, the hottest topics happening now. There's only one place to find it all.
You guys are having the hard conversations. I love The View.
The most watched #1 daytime talk show is The View. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
You have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
ABC News honored winner of 9 Edward R. Murrow Awards, more than any other network, including winning for the 3rd straight year the award for overall excellence in television. ABC News is America's #1 news source. With so much at stake, more Americans turn here than any other newscast. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 newscast and the #1 program on television.
Hey there, I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We're monitoring several developments here at ABC News at this hour. The trial of 3 former Minnesota police officers charged in the death of George Floyd is officially underway. During opening statements today, prosecutors say that the men made the conscious decision over and over again not to protect or help 46-year-old Floyd as he was under the knee of Derek Chauvin. The men have all pleaded not guilty to the charges. The trial is expected to last anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. Several sailors were injured when a Navy fighter jet crashed during a landing. The Navy says the F-35 fighter jet was lost in the South China Sea. As tensions rise between Ukraine and Russia, the Department of Homeland Security has a stern warning. Any U.S. response could result in a cyber attack from the Russian government. Russia is believed to have a wide range of offensive cyber tools to launch that could cause anything from low-level inconveniences to destruction to critical infrastructure. Now to the fast-moving developments as tensions mount over Russia's military buildup along Ukraine's border. President Biden put thousands of U.S. troops on heightened alert to potentially support NATO forces in Europe. The concerns tonight of a possible Russian invasion. ABC's chief global affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz has the latest.
With more Russian troops massing on Ukraine's border, Navy vessels in the Baltic Seas, and Russian fighter jets heading to Belarus, Ukraine's neighbor to the north, the Pentagon tonight placing 8,500 U.S. troops on heightened alert for possible rapid deployment to back NATO allies in Eastern Europe and the Baltics.
The United States has taken steps to heighten the readiness of its forces at home and abroad so that they are prepared to respond to a range of contingencies, including support to the NATO response force if it is activated.
The president talking with European leaders on a secure video call late this afternoon.
I had a very, very, very good meeting, total unanimity with all the European leaders.
That meeting followed one with his national security team at Camp David over the weekend. Biden could have deployed those troops to NATO immediately, but stopped short of that.
I want to reinforce that as of now, the decision has been made to put these units on higher alert and higher alert only. No decisions have been made to deploy any forces from the United States at this time.
The U.S. troops, which would be part of that NATO force, would include ground combat units, reconnaissance, and aviation forces. We joined U.S. fighter pilots on a NATO exercise when Russia was building up forces in the Baltics after it annexed Crimea from Ukraine.
We're flying over Estonia now, but just over to the east, to the right, is Russia.
We heard Russian pilots warn the Americans in 2016 not to cross the border. NATO saying its show of force was a critical deterrent. But now, with more than 100,000 Russian troops on Ukraine's border, the possibility of war seems greater than ever. And while the U.S. has ruled out sending troops into Ukraine itself, the U.S. is shipping hundreds of thousands of pounds of ammunition and lethal aid to Ukraine and evacuating some diplomatic personnel and families, saying an invasion could occur at any time. But Ukraine's president tonight said the embassy departures were unnecessary and premature and is urging people to remain calm.
Our thanks to Martha. Now to Syria and the alarming attack on a Kurdish-run prison by members of the terror group ISIS. They're trying to free thousands of fighters and supporters and apparently using children as human shields. For the very latest, we bring in ABC's foreign correspondent James Longman. Thanks for joining us, James. So tell us, where do things stand right now, and how many children are potentially at risk at this point?
Well, Lindsay, the siege is ongoing. Part of the prison, we understand, has been secured. There are 3 main buildings in this facility. But the part of this detention centre which holds children, specifically 700 of them, if reports from UNICEF are to be believed, some as young as 12, are still in this prison. Now, it was holding them because these were the ISIS cubs. If you remember back to when we saw those videos of propaganda from ISIS where they were grooming young children to fight as in ISIS brigades, well, these are the children that were groomed, many of them without parents, and that is why they were in the detention centre. ISIS has taken the opportunity to seize this prison, hold these children as human shields, therefore stopping SDF, the Syrian Democratic Forces backed by the United States, from storming the compound. But in the last few moments, we have had a message which has been posted to Twitter by the SDF, which they have been pumping out on a loudspeaker outside of the prison, and they've sent in leaflets saying, "You are completely surrounded by our forces and there is no way out. Surrender yourselves. Do not choose the final dance of death." Make no mistake, Lindsay, this was a very sophisticated attack. More than 200 ISIS fighters took part in it from outside the prison. ISIS fighters were coordinating inside to rise up, take weapons off their jailers. So far, we know something like 200 ISIS fighters have died in this siege and something like 30 SDF deaths. Now, the SDF is preparing to storm that prison. Lindsay?
Wow. And James, many Americans may have the impression that ISIS was defeated in 2019, but it seems like they're back. What's happening at this point?
Well, they were defeated militarily, but the ideology remained. And if you remember, the United States decided suddenly to pull out from northeastern Syria. I went as a result. Donald Trump's decision to pull US forces, remaining forces, out of northeastern Syria resulted in the Turkish launching an incursion into northern Syria. And what's happened since is that many ethnic Arabs have been moved back into this area, and the conditions have been appalling. ISIS has got the groundwork, it's got the conditions for its radicalization and its extremism to prosper. There are something like 12,000 men and boys in detention centres like this accused of ISIS affiliation across the region. 80,000 men, women and children, families thought to be linked to ISIS in camps. And they are just sitting there in squalid conditions. And this is providing the conditions for ISIS to thrive. We are not about to see the re-establishment of the ISIS caliphate by any measure. But this is a situation which is completely untenable. And for years, the Kurds, the SDF, they've been saying they need help to try to process these people, to try to put them through some kind of justice. But nothing has happened, and this is what we're seeing. And we're going to be back here again and again and again until something is actually done about the thousands of former ISIS fighters who still sit in prisons in northeastern Syria.
It just seems untenable at this point. And James, humor us for a moment, because we'd like to take an extraordinary left turn and about face and ask you about British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who, of course, you cover for us. The scandal over his BYOB garden party back in May of 2020, when the country was under strict lockdown, it's only growing. What do you feel could happen at this point?
Well, Lindsay, it wasn't just one party. I mean, there are a number of parties. And actually, today, we've just had, in the last few hours, another report of another party, this time his own birthday, which apparently he celebrated during the lockdown. I think the one that really upset people was the party that was supposed to have happened on the eve of Prince Philip's funeral, the day, of course, where we saw the Queen socially distanced in a pew at her husband's funeral, unable to mourn him properly because of the rules that were in place. So this has really angered people. We're all waiting now for a report, which has been commissioned by the government, by a civil servant. Her name is Sue Gray, so we're calling it the Sue Gray Report. It is an investigation into exactly what the Prime Minister knew, if he knew he was breaking the rules at the time, and if, when he told Parliament that he didn't think they were breaking the rules, that was a lie. If that is found to be the case, this Prime Minister could face a vote of no confidence. And how that works is that MPs have to send in letters of no confidence to one particular lawmaker. He knows how many he's got. He needs 54 to reach a threshold whereby all Conservative MPs, all Conservative lawmakers in the House then vote on the future of their leader. If more than 50% of them decide that Boris Johnson is no longer Prime Minister or should no longer be their leader, he is out. So once the most untouchable figure in British politics is currently looking like he may be the outgoing British Prime Minister by the end of this week, but who knows?
Right.
My guess is as good as yours.
It seems that he would have known the rules better than anyone, but certainly some high stakes at this point. James Longman, our thanks to you.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Former Republican vice presidential nominee Sarah Palin's libel case against the New York Times has been postponed because Palin has tested positive for COVID-19, according to a Manhattan federal court judge. The trial was set to start today, but will now begin February 2nd. Palin sued the Times, claiming an editorial incorrectly linked her political rhetoric to a mass shooting. We now bring you a story that aims to tell the truth about post-war adoption in America and the human toll that it took. The book, American Baby, A Mother, a Child, and the Shadow History of Adoption, is told through the bittersweet experience of a teenage girl, the son she was forced to give up, and their paralleled search to find each other. The author, Gabrielle Glazer, joins us now. Welcome to the show. Thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
So this is obviously a deeply personal story of David Rosenberg, his biological mother, and their quest to find each other after she was coerced to give him up. What took you on this particular journey to tell this story?
I met David Rosenberg as a newspaper reporter in Oregon in 2007. He was an adopted man who was about to get a kidney from a friend, kidney donation. And in the process of getting to know him, I learned that he was hoping the story would go viral and that he hoped that his birth mother would see it so that he would be able to learn more medical information for his 3 children. That didn't quite happen, but 7 years later, he called me and told me that a DNA test had reunited him with his birth mother.
And when did you realize that this was a bigger story about the sordid history of adoption in America?
Well, it turned out that secrecy laws in New York State, but actually were nationwide. David had been born and adopted in New York State. He lived in Oregon at the time that I met him. But secrecy laws had kept him apart from his birth mother, Margaret Earl Katz, for 52 years. And he wanted to know why that had happened. And what was it? What were the institutions that had kept him apart from his birth mother? But not only him, an estimated 3.5 million other adoptees apart from their birth kin as well.
An underlying theme throughout the book is the debate over abortion. Why do you think that it's so necessary for abortion to be part of the conversation surrounding the baby scoop of the 50s, 60s, and 70s?
You know, it's interesting. Obviously, last month we had a Supreme Court justice who just simply made the statement that why do we need abortion when adoption is a viable option for women who have crisis pregnancies? But the astonishing thing to the adoptees, an estimated 5 million adoptees in this country and an estimated 5 million birth mothers, is that the research behind that, the actual reality, the emotional and physical reality of being separated from one's birth kin is enormous. And it's not just an either or. From what I learned in writing and reporting this book, is that the toll of being separated from having to relinquish a child at birth, and then being separated from the people who you look like, who you sound like, whose talents you have, is lifelong. It's not just a simple substitution.
But is it, it's interesting because you brought up that justice saying that adoption is a viable option. Is it? I have a friend who's going through the process right now. It's tens of thousands of dollars. Why is it so expensive to the point where someone who wants to truly go out and be a mother cannot do it easily?
Well, it reflects a simple supply and demand. There were an estimated 1 million parents hoping to adopt what I think is an availability of about 18,000 children. So that is a pretty steep ratio.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for your time. Gabrielle Glazer, author of American Baby, A Mother, a Child, and the Shadow History of Adoption. We really appreciate the book is available wherever books are sold.
Thanks for having me.
Well, the NFL playoffs certainly had us all on the edge of our seats with what some are calling the best weekend ever. All 4 games were decided on the very last play, capped off by that thrilling Chiefs-Bills game. ABC's Will Reeve has all the exciting highlights.
In an instant, all-time classic Sunday night, Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs.
Mahomes, all kinds of time. Again, he's going to take off and succeed. Did he get the pylon?
Facing off against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills.
Allen fires it. It's a wide open. Remarkable. Touchdown.
All night, the 2 superstar quarterbacks trading blows and points. 25 of them combined in the final 2 minutes. The Chiefs kicking a game-tying field goal as time expired before winning in overtime.
Ball game. Chiefs to the championship game.
If you're not going to go down fighting, then you don't deserve to be here. And we knew that if we could just give ourselves a chance to get in Butker's field goal range, he was going to knock it in, and he did.
It was a weekend full of drama, with almost comebacks and last-second victories on walk-off field goals. The Cincinnati Bengals defeating the top-seeded Tennessee Titans, and the San Francisco 49ers knocking off Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers.
49ers win it!
Living legend Tom Brady faced off against a hot Los Angeles Rams team who wanted to make their mark against the Bucs. Brady unhappy with that hit and receiving his first ever unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. But the bloodied Brady would not be bowed and led his Tampa Bay Buccaneers all the way back from a 27-3 deficit. It looked like the 7-time Super Bowl champ was set to write another chapter of his myth, only to see Matthew Stafford and the Rams kick the winning field goal as the clock hit 0.
Boots it through.
With rumors swirling about the 44-year-old's playing future, Brady was circumspect.
I haven't put a lot of thought into it, so we'll just take it day by day and see where we're at. I'm thinking about this game, and I'm not thinking about anything past 5 minutes from now.
Our thanks to Will for that. And still to come, we are tracking another coup in Africa. A quick look around the world coming up next.
With so much at stake, so much on the line, more Americans turn here than any place else. ABC News World News Tonight with David Muir, America's #1 most watched newscast, now streaming on ABC News Live.
It was a scary time. In the 70s, you had multiple bodies showing up in Los Angeles.
There were so many murders happening. You had to have a name for it, serial killer.
There was a human head in there. This was premeditated evil.
We have this clock. This person is going to do this again.
It's me against the killer. Who's going to win?
We'll see who laughs last.
What came next was unlike anything they had ever seen.
Admit it, these days, what you need to know
seems to change just about every day.
What is it that you really want to know, need to know?
To help you not just get through your day,
but to make the most of it. Feel smarter.
Feel better.
Feel happier.
Well, how about a third hour of Good Morning America?
GMA 3, what you need to know. Now streaming on ABC News Live.
It's all about you.
I risked my life. I put my family in danger. If I was caught, they would have put a bullet in my head. But it was the right thing to do. It was the only thing to do.
Terror plot foiled in Garden City, Kansas.
That would have been one of the most deadly acts of domestic terrorism ever in the United States.
It would have been Oklahoma City.
He put his family, himself, in jeopardy for us.
24 hours, assault on the Capitol. The ABC News original, exclusively on Hulu. Now streaming. This is what being live is all about. This is ABC News Live.
All right, we're gonna move back. Let's move back.
We're surrounded by people squeezing into this bomb shelter.
We're on an urgent delivery run.
Not afraid to go there.
So my question, Mr. President, what are you so afraid of?
Breaking news, live events.
This is the moment.
Streaming straight to you, anytime, anywhere.
You just met one friend right here.
You're watching ABC News Live. Thanks for streaming with us.
National parks are incredibly safe places. A crime will happen.
Hey, my wife has fallen. She's in really critical condition.
At that time, I thought it was just a tragic accident.
There's still a lot of questions we need to ask.
There were small things that didn't totally add up.
This is 2 lives for Harold that have died now.
I was shocked.
Something's not right.
Welcome back. We're tracking several headlines around the world. The army in Burkina Faso has ousted their president, suspended their constitution, dissolved the government, and closed the country's borders. In an announcement, they said the president was removed due to his inability to unite the West African nation and effectively respond to various challenges, including an Islamist insurgency. Burkina Faso is one of West Africa's poorest countries. Despite being a gold producer, it has experienced numerous coups since independence from France in 1960. A Mexican reporter who told President Lopez Obrador 3 years ago that she feared for her life was killed over the weekend. Lourdes Maldonado, a local journalist with decades of experience, was shot dead in her car in the border city of Tijuana, just south of San Diego, California. Maldonado is the second journalist killed in the same area in just 1 week, underscoring the country's status as one of the deadliest for journalists outside a war zone. On a lighter note, take a look at these adorable panda cubs making their public debut at a nature reserve in southwestern China. Panda toddlers ranging from 120 to 190 days old crawled through the snow on toy sleds and skis. The cubs were displayed to mark the upcoming Chinese New Year and the Beijing Winter Olympics. All right, time now to get the 411 on 007 with Daniel Craig leaving the legendary movie franchise. The search is now on for a new Bond, James Bond. Now, a word from the longtime producer of the movie hints that Idris Elba taking over the role is certainly part of the conversation. ABC's Chris Connolly has more.
Sean Connery.
Bond.
Roger Moore.
James Bond.
Timothy Dalton.
Would you get me a medium dry vodka martini?
Pierce Brosnan.
Shaken, not stirred.
And Elba. Idris Elba. Could he at last become the 008th man to play James Bond in the movies?
If we don't do this, there will be nothing left to say.
Charged with anointing a new Bond in the wake of Daniel Craig's No Time to Die swan song, producer Barbara Broccoli with words to the Deadline podcast this past week concerning the 49-year-old Elba.
Well, we know Idris. I mean, we're friends. I'm friends with him, and he's a magnificent actor. And, it's been part of the conversation.
That was enough to get social media both shaken and stirred, because when it comes to Bond fans, the Idris Elba conversation has been underway for some time, even when the star himself has demurred. 2016.
I think I'm too old for that, man. I can't be running around in cars and ladies and martinis. Who wants to do that? That sounds terrible.
Terrible to whom exactly, respond his many partisans. From his breakout role as drug dealer Stringer Bell in The Wire.
I'm not round the way no more. You want to find me, I'm right here.
To his award-winning performance in the haunting Beasts of No Nation.
What are you doing here?
The character of James Bond has transformed and shape-shifted as much as the times have since its 1960s movie debut. And should Elba take on that role, it would have impact far beyond a typical recasting.
It would just be so huge and such a culturally shifting moment. And it also really expands that audience. You do not have to be white to be sexy, sip a martini, and save the world.
For now, the notion of Elba as Bond may reflect more hope than reality. He said this to London's ITV News in October.
I'm not going to be John Bond.
But would you like to?
Who wouldn't?
Bond producers say they're still focused on Daniel Craig's finale.
Until No Time to Die has kind of had its run, we're not going to think about or talk about anybody else.
That's it. We're not going to think about or talk about anybody else. Our thanks to Chris Connolly for that. And now to another beloved actor. We know Daveed Diggs from his brilliant turn as Marquis de Lafayette and Thomas Jefferson in the smash hit musical Hamilton, and from movies like Blind Spotting and Wonder and comedies like Blackish. His latest show is TNT's Snowpiercer, an action-packed thriller about a post-apocalyptic world where Earth is a frozen wasteland and all surviving humans live on a perpetually moving train that circles the globe. Here's Diggs in the newly released Season 3.
Should be clear of track contaminants. I'm going to start pulling ice samples.
How's it looking?
Palm trees, golden sands. Gotta catch me some North Korean waves.
Nice. I'll grab my board. I'll be right out, bro.
Let him focus.
Keeping him calm.
You're distracting him. Ben, the suit's at 22 minutes. Your heart rate's good. You steady on, okay?
Copy that.
Had a chance to speak with Daveed Diggs about this project. Daveed Diggs, we thank you so much for talking to us. Excited to talk about Season 3 of Snowpiercer. So basically this is about, you know, the baseness of human nature, about class struggle, and the degradation of the planet. What drew you to the character of Andre Layton?
I think he's an interesting hero in that he's wrong often. And I like that. I think we don't give our heroes the opportunity to be wrong a lot in our fiction, and he fails constantly and gets up and keeps going and tries to learn from his mistakes. And I think that's sort of my favorite thing about him. But he's not uncorruptible. He's just a guy doing the best he can.
So tell us about when you were actually shooting. Obviously, there were some production delays, but this was right in the thick of COVID. You guys are all in the show stuck on this train that's moving. You can't go outside at all. I'm sure that was not lost on anyone, kind of the parallels there with COVID. What was it like during that process?
Well, the wild thing for Season 3 was that the borders were closed in Canada. We shoot in Vancouver. And so those of us who were used to, in earlier seasons, getting to go home, see our loved ones on weekends, none of that could happen. And the end result of that was that we as a cast spent so much time together outside of shooting. And I think all of us, I think I can speak for everybody, I can say we're so grateful for each other. This cast is really, really special. And we were already very close, and we got way, way closer due to the restrictions placed on us.
And of course, this is set in 2026. That's just 4 years from now. But are there parallels that you see when you're looking at the direction of the show and real life as far as humanity and where we might be heading? Because it seems like it would have been set way further in the future, but maybe that is really the direction that we are all heading in 4 years.
I mean, the show is basically just takes what we're living through now and puts it in a train with like knife fights and crazy things around to keep us entertained. But if you look at it, like, what are we doing in Season 3? There's like a pirate train out looking for inhabitable places on the Earth, which like that, you know, we're sending missions to Mars in real life currently because we're all pretty concerned that the Earth is not going to be something we can live on for very much longer. We've got authoritarianism having popped up in a world that thought they were pretty committed to democracy, right? Like it is just the things that are happening on Snowpiercer are really just the writer's room looking at the news and saying, well, this is happening, so let's put it on the train. It's not actually particularly dystopian, which is a little bit tragic. We just sort of surrounded by fire and knives.
And lastly, without giving anything away and no spoilers here, what can people expect from Season 3?
A lot of surprise, a lot of great action from people who you didn't always get to see it from. I think there's some really great twists and turns in Season 3. And just more and more conflicts, but I think like what Snowpiercer's become is pretty like relentless kind of storytelling. What I think is unique about Season 3 is that some of the characters' most fundamental emotional discoveries are coming within these really action-packed moments. That was really fun to shoot. There's a great storyline that's developed between Layton and Josie, and a lot of those things like come out literally while they're doing some impossible task. I think that was a pretty cool thing as an actor to get to work with.
Well, we are excited as viewers to be able to watch your work, and so thank you so much for your time tonight, Daveed. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Fun to talk with Daveed Diggs, and you can watch Snowpiercer Season 3 on TNT. That is our show for tonight. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. I'm Lindsay Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. Have a great night.